Hello there.
Hiya.
Friends, lovers, thank you for joining us in these modern times. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy. Nasir, yes. And you, all of you, thank you for joining us. I see we've already got some people in the chat.
Yay.
Let me just bring my screen up. Man, we were under the last minute. I think we started a minute late. Sorry about that. Something I'm always trying to not let happen. Because, I know a lot of shows that do start late on a regular basis. I'm not naming any names, but I do try to start right at the top of the hour, so I apologize. I owe you that minute and 30 seconds, whatever it is. You decide what it's worth and put in your claims as you wish. Of course, we all know what as you wish means. Thank you for joining us. This is May 21st, 2023, the 141st. Can you believe we're 141 days into it? The 141st day of this, your best year yet. And you have got 224 days left to make that so. We've got some ideas today for how to make sure that this is your best year yet. And you can decide which of those ideas are valuable to you and put them into effect. We've got 218 days till Christmas, 163 days until Halloween, and 31, I guess podcast people can't see me doing hand gestures, but 31 days until summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Sorry about you down south below the equator and winter's coming, or maybe you're looking forward to that. So, yes, definitely summer is in effect. We've already reserved the date in September for Robert's 8th annual rock and roll picnic. We'll be at the very tail end of summer.
Yes, this is at a park just down the street from our studio, and It's got a beautiful gazebo, and we have a cookout, and
we do.
A whole bunch of people come and they jam, and it's kind of a chaotic mess, but it actually turns out very nice.
It's an open jam. If you can play an instrument, great. If you can't, just come watch people play and eat.
Yeah.
Join the picnic if you're in Southeast Michigan that time of September. Hopefully there won't be people in the park doing what we saw them doing recently during a recent bicycle ride.
We
won't get into that. It wasn't necessarily anything illegal, but that's all I'm going to say.
It was kinda.
I guess it was kind of illegal to do that publicly. Good times at the Capitol Park in Redford, Michigan. So, yes, May 21st, and on this date, a couple of real quick ones, because we've got don't we always have a thread that we weave together on this date in 1881. 1881, so over 140 years ago, the American Red Cross was founded. Now, I love the American Red Cross. I love the American Red Cross for obvious reasons. If you follow me on the socials, you know, for example, I like donating blood. I like the idea that I put something out there, and it doesn't cost me anything. Actually, all it does is let my bone marrow get supercharged and give me fresh blood cells and make me extra healthy. It's super cool. It's win-win. There's no loss on my part. And hey, someday I'm going to need blood. It's nice to know that other people are doing that thing too. And I bring that up because I think probably about 102% of our audience are Ayn Rand fans, objectivists. And we need organizations like that. In the old days, we had more of them, mutual aid societies, groups that would do the things that, those of us who are freedom-minded say the government shouldn't be doing. So, big fan of the American Red Cross. Big fan of anybody who provides that kind of, the relief agencies and mutual aid societies and even insurance companies. Huge shout out. I know people are skeptical because some of these organizations are in bed with the government in ways they shouldn't be, but the story is great. Clara Barton was a nurse who established the American Red Cross in Danville, New York, May 21st, 1881, the organization's first president. She organized a meeting on May 12th of that year at the house of Senator Omar D. Conger. Well, at that point, this is a representative of Michigan. Yes, we are broadcasting from Motown. Made sense to get involved with these people, let them know what you were doing. The first chapter was established 1881 at the English Evangelical Lutheran Church of Dansville. Well, churches should be good for something. So by all means, working with an organization like the American Red Cross and folks like Clara Barton, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, they're community organizations. They're private organizations. At least that's how it started and everything. And
they have an unfair tax advantage, but
Well, I mean, oftentimes when the government gets involved in an organization like that, they take the first initiative so that the politicians can say, yes, I am responsible for throwing taxpayer money at this organization. Aren't I, magnanimous or whatever? Vote for me.
Yeah.
That's usually how that goes. It's usually name dropping and...
Yeah, the less government, the better. And in that regard, May 21st, 1901, so 20 years later, Connecticut enacts the first speed limit law. Now,
you said what? Did you say the date yet?
Yes, May 21st, 1901, 20 years after the Red Cross was. Now, I mentioned the Red Cross in the context of the ethics of emergencies and the idea that, well, in emergency situations, ethics might not seem to apply in the same way, but in reality, those things do happen, and we have ways of dealing with them. That's what I love about the Red Cross. In the context of rules and regulations, see, I'm thinking, we talk about, in an ideal society, the government will only do three things. The government will enforce laws, and only laws that are proper laws, which are laws against violations of rights. Generally, the initiation of physical force against somebody, although that also includes indirect force, fraud, libel, things like that. May 21st, 1901, Connecticut enacts the first speed limit law. One of the first speed limits in what would become the United States, at the time still a British colony, was in 1701. By the Board of Selectmen of a city council, this is great, the first speed limit law before the United States, 1701, ordered that no person shall at any time heretofore ride or drive at a gallop or other extreme pace within any streets, lanes, or alleys of this town on penalty of forfeiting 3 shillings for every such offense, and it may be lawful for any of the inhabitants of this town to make stop of such horse or rider until the name of the offender be known in order to prosecution. Okay, speed limit laws. In a free society, would you have speed limit laws? Well, I have 2 things to say about that. First of all, if the roads are privately owned, whoever owns the road makes the rules. But also, even in societies we have today, there is such a thing as reckless endangerment.
Yes.
There is a reason why you're not allowed to own a nuclear weapon in your house. And I would argue that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Or stockpile a whole bunch of fireworks in your garage, up to the ceiling.
Well, if it can be shown to be reckless endangerment. So, yeah. I don't like speed limit laws. I like driving at Yarn Brook kinds of speeds. But I also don't like speeding tickets. And I have some respect for the law. I know some objectivists who are very, very cynical about the law because there's so many bad laws. And I totally get that and agree with that. But I'm actually kind of okay with, some standards.
I mean, I like driving about 30 miles an hour, maybe a little less than that, in residential neighborhoods. Because, when people...
Oh, that's true. You like slow drivers in residential neighborhoods.
Oh,
that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to be that terribly slow, but, don't go 40, 45 miles an hour down my street. That's not safe.
Yeah, and a noise ordinance, at some point, your noise level is a violation of the rights of other people.
Yes.
So, anyway, don't mean to sound like old people complaining about that kind of stuff. Only making the point that speed limits are not necessarily non-objective law.
Right.
Reckless endangerment, threatening the safety and welfare of others in a way that can be shown to be reckless, beyond what reason can compensate for.
I mean, in terms of the egregiousness of laws and the non-objective laws, street laws are not, they're kind of lower on the list in terms of their...
in terms of their priority, but what the point I want to make, and I'm going to tie this together with the Red Cross and everything else, is that it's not necessarily the case that because there are speed limits, we are living in an oppressive society. Now, I would say it's the case that because the speed limits are so low, they really need to be a good 20 miles an hour or 30 kilometers an hour higher than they are, but at some point. So, let me go from there to Charles Lindbergh. Now, Charles Lindbergh has a spotty reputation among objectivists.
Mm. And in a lot of other ways, he was a man of mixed ideological premises, as well as some other things. So, yeah. But he also did a lot of really amazing things that we should admire and say, I'm inspired by that.
I think a lot of it had to do with his tortured life.
I didn't know this.
He was extremely ambitious. He was an aviator, airplane flyer guy. In fact, he was the best. In the late 1920s, he was a hero of aviation. He completed the first solo, meaning he didn't have anybody else in the airplane. He didn't have a navigator, which was a very big deal back then. First solo nonstop transatlantic flight across the Atlantic Ocean. Like, what about the Pacific? That would be harder. Yeah, but it wasn't as much of a draw because the relationship of the United States to Europe versus the United States, California, which is way out west. And then where would you go? Like China? I mean, nowadays we go to Japan like we did last month. But yes, first transatlantic flight, 1927, on this date. Charles Lindbergh, total hero, totally awesome. The problem was, maybe, I'm speculating, but it's better to speculate than never. Yet 5 years later, Charles Lindbergh is very wealthy, he's very famous, and unfortunately, he was the victim of the crime of the century, as it was called. His son, Charles Jr., was kidnapped for a ransom and then eventually murdered by the kidnappers. And this had the kind of effect that it would have on any father. Eventually, Lindbergh actually moved for a while to Europe and then eventually returned to the United States. Now, after that, his ideology, his politics, and even his metaphysics got real wonky. And if you want to know how, you could read the Time magazine articles or just listen to Ayn Rand and her speech, Apollo and Dionysus. Because later in his life, Charles Lindbergh came to represent the Dionysian side, the side of, emotions and instincts and gut feeling and mysticism on a metaphysical level. Mm-hmm. But totally the man in 1927. And here's what's great about that. On this date, 1927, Charles Lindbergh, transatlantic flight solo, nobody else in the airplane, crosses the Atlantic. 5 years later, nobody else had done it. Nobody else, in 5 years, there were so many developments in aviation, you would think somebody would have matched that feat. 5 years later, it was finally matched. It was finally done by the great, the magnificent, the totally awesome Amelia Earhart. Becomes the first woman to make a solo, nonstop transatlantic flight. Super. And again, on this date, 5 years to the day, something to celebrate. And there's a link in my show notes. If you go to the description on YouTube, you can find links to the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovations collection on Amelia Earhart.
Yes.
And there's some information inside the museum, but there's also some behind the scenes that you can find out about online.
At Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, we have a really lovely permanent exhibit called Heroes of the Sky. It's beautiful, actually. It's one of my very favorite parts of the museum, and it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. I like this, just gotta say.
And you may be thinking, well, I'm sure there's pictures and video, but are there actually airplanes in the museum? There are a couple airplanes.
Just ridiculous amounts of airplanes.
Including a particularly big one. What is it, a DC-3?
Yes.
In the museum.
Yes, hanging from the ceiling.
Now, you don't get to go into the airplanes, although they have an exhibit where you go into a recreation of the inside of the airplanes. You can compare what they were like in the 1930s and 60s versus, I forget what the three periods are, but it's great fun to sit in a chair like you're on an airplane, and there's, video windows and things, so you feel like you're flying. And see, originally you were sitting like on wicker chairs.
Wicker chairs, because they were light.
Lightweight.
They didn't have the engine power to carry a heavy load, so wicker chairs it is. But there's actually a really nice one where they talk about the wing walkers. A lot of young women actually strapping their ankles and their feet onto the wings of these airplanes, and having the pilot do loop-de-loops while they're actually standing on the wing.
That's what I want to know is, are there barnstormers anymore?
Yes.
Are there high-flying daredevils anymore?
That'd be nice.
You watch a film where, and some of it's fake, done in the studio, but watch films like going down to Rio, very early, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, and you see the aerial daredevils. Well, if you go to the Henry Ford Museum, you see video of the real ones who went out there and did those things. And, including attractive women in bikini bathing suits standing on the wings of airplanes as they're flying through the sky.
Well, they're no longer wearing bikinis, but I see that as of 2008, there's actually a picture on Wikipedia from Duxford, UK, United Kingdom.
There's still troops doing that. How awesome.
Yes, doing a Flying Legends air show. And that would be
Incredible.
lovely to see. That would be great.
Yeah, and of course the barnstormers, these guys, well, usually guys, people who flew an aircraft. They were single-engine aircrafts, and they would have an extra seat. And they would fly to, like, farmlands and land in a field and set up shop for a day, and you could go there, and they would take you up in the air and fly you around for 15 minutes or half an hour, whatever it is, for a fee. I don't know if people still do barnstorming. If you're familiar with the fairly mystical author Richard Bach, there's some great stories that he tells, and many of them involve flying in just such a way. So yes, on this date, 1927, Charles Lindbergh. On this date, 1932, Amelia Earhart. A story of Amelia Earhart's circumnavigating the globe, going around the world.
Yes, tell us about this.
Well, I'm not going to tell the whole story because it didn't happen on this date, and it's kind of tragic. What I didn't know until I researched more about Amelia Earhart, it was super inspiring, totally awesome. But the circumnavigating the globe was not solo. She did have a navigator on the aircraft, which, it's kind of a shame because he doesn't really get the attention. And the navigator's story, I don't have it in front of me, but is interesting too. Take a look at the links, take a look at the Wikipedia article, but definitely visit the Henry Ford's website to see more about that. And then real quick, on this date, it's National Waitstaff Day. So remember to tip your waitress. You can over-tip your waitress, but you can't tip over your waitress.
By the way, it's Fred Noonan who is the navigator who worked with Amelia Earhart.
Who is assumed to have perished at the same time. But yeah, we don't hear as much about him. Mm-hmm. And he's actually got a great story. He was extremely, had enormous experience, very good at what he did, both commercially and with military. And there was no question that she had a competent man on the airplane. Whether he made a mistake and that's why they went off course, there are some people who think maybe it was because when they crossed the international date line, it threw some of the charts that they were working with off. No idea. But they were heroes, total heroes.
Absolutely.
Totally awesome. So yes, National Waitstaff Day. Did you know there are 1.5 million waiters and waitresses just in the United States alone? Respect your waitstaff.
Yes.
Good people. I've had great waiters, waitresses. I've had bad waiters and waitresses. It's one thing I love about tipping. They don't do that as much in Europe. They don't do it at all in Japan. I like tipping because I like being able to throw something extra at people who really deserve it. It's not so much about stiffing the people who aren't very good at it, although I've been known to do that too, but it's about praising virtue. Yes,
and I like to see the looks on the waiter or waitress's face when they pick up the tip that you gave them and they're delighted by it. I love that. As a matter of fact, when we were, I think we've said this before, but in Japan, I was a little disappointed that they didn't accept that practice. Because I really, really, really wanted to show my appreciation for them. I can bow and I can say arigato gozaimasu so many times, but there's just not enough.
So I see Jupiter Menace is in the chat. I owe you an answer on the event you're putting together. The short answer is very much interested. I just need to get you a reply with more information. Thank you for that. But thanks for being in the chat and listening to the show. I need to keep up with the chat better because there's always good stuff in there. So yes, National Waitstaff Day. again, when I was young, tipping to me felt like a burden. Like, oh man, I got to give more money on top of the check, especially these days when all the prices are up. As I've gotten older, I've learned just budget that. Just consider it part of the cost. And it adds to the fun. It really does. So, it's World Meditation Day. Take that for what it's worth. It is the great Fats Waller's birthday.
Wait. Meditation Day. I need to meditate.
I was going to tie meditation in with today's message, which we'll get to. But
Okay, anyway.
But
yeah.
I see that I'm already I try to take 10 minutes for the initial stuff. And we're going real long. So it's Fats Waller's birthday. There is a link to a great appearance by Fats Waller. Anything that he does is great. Great fun. The fun thing about an artist like Fats Waller is he's so charming, but also so outrageous.
He's great.
That sometimes you don't pay attention to what a great piano player he was.
My God, he was good. He died in his 40s. And
died very young, yeah.
But my God, what an enormous talent he was. Yep. I mean, and so joyful to listen to and to, watch, perform, and boy, oh boy, I just,
Yep.
I love Fats Waller. It's one of my very, very, very favorite performers.
His son tells a story in one of the videos I linked to about how Fats Waller was in one of the clubs and somebody grabbed him, put a blindfold on him, threw him in a car, wouldn't explain what was going on. It's like, what?
Good.
And, we've been watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and, there are mob people out there, and you never know what's going on in the entertainment world. Well, it turns out he gets to a different location, a different club. They take off his blindfold. Al Capone is there, along with a whole bunch of other heavies.
Whoa.
And says, I want you to play for us.
Great way to do it, mister. Jeez.
And the thing is, every time he plays a song, they stick a $100 bill in his pocket. As his son tells the story, and who knows how embellished that was or what it was like when Dad told him the story, but by the time he got home, a day and a half after this happened, every one of the pockets on his jacket was full of $100 bills. So make of that what you will.
Fats Waller.
Yeah, so he only lived to be, going by the dates, either 38 or 39, but somebody who is still with us is Mr. T.
Yes, Mr. T.
Yes, Mr.
He's
T.
71.
Yes, this is his 71st birthday, that's right. So we love watching Mr. T on the A-Team.
I pity the fool.
Pity the fool. Also, Rocky 3.
Yes.
So very, very cool. Happy birthday to Mr. T. And that's everybody I wanted to shout out.
All I got to say is I hope Mr. T is having a wonderful life.
I don't doubt that he is. Yeah, he always had the great attitude.
He had that funny mother song from the 80s.
Mother.
Mother.
There's no other. Yes. Oh, don't even look that up on YouTube. I'm glad I didn't link to it. I just linked to the A-Team. But, it's not as bad as some of the 70s stuff out there. Like the Star Wars Christmas special, or Leonard Nimoy singing about Bilbo Baggins.
Yes.
There are worse things out there than Mr. T singing in honor of mothers, but it's pretty damn bad.
Oh, it's the best.
Oh my gosh.
So funny.
Okay, real quick. What did we podcast this week? Well, I did a podcast with James Valiant called Let's Have Sex Again. Now, I was not having sex with James Valiant. We were talking about sex again, but of course, provocative titles, the clickbait. I'm totally Mr. Clickbait, so that was good, and I think it was worth watching. We discussed some interesting things that were not the usual stuff, but my other show, the one I did on Thursday, was called The Joy of Selfishness. Mm-hmm. Now, I grew up when The Joy of Cooking was the cookbook that everybody had, The Joy of Cooking. And then a book came out called The Joy of Sex, which those of you who are young enough not to remember before the internet, was a good book if you were young and interested in romance. And I mean teenage, not little kids, but...
Right.
So we had that.
Yeah, instructive, but not sleazy necessarily.
Yeah, it didn't even have photographs. There were drawings, but it was very charmingly rendered. So I couldn't resist having a show called The Joy of Selfishness. And the point that I tried to make, even though my internet was wonky, I don't know, maybe one of the guys installing the new air conditioner were using the microwave at the same time or something. The microwave can interfere with Wi-Fi, and Studio 4 doesn't have a wired connection, unlike where we're at right now. But I tried to make the point that I regard pessimism and malevolence, and I started with the pessimism and the malevolence of your typical far, pick your poison, right-winger, left-winger, is a failure. It's a failure of selfishness. It's a failure to be selfish. I think maybe, sometimes I fail in that way. Oh, we all fail in that way. And that's what's still on my mind. Now, the other two things that I watched this week that I do recommend, and I put them in the show notes, I watched the video of Phil Collins on Johnny Carson. He's sitting at a piano singing the song Against All Odds, which he wrote as the title song to that film. And it's not even a favorite song of mine, but Phil Collins playing piano and singing is, I know this guy as the drummer in Genesis. And then, eventually the lead singer in Genesis after Peter Gabriel left. And then you know him by his, solo albums, but you don't realize, or maybe you do, but I didn't realize, just how multi-talented the guy is. Not only did he write the music on his solo albums, but he actually can play something besides drums.
Oh, yeah.
So, super cool video. Watch that if you have any interest in it. The other video that I posted, two other videos I posted links to. One of them is to Ted Lasso. We've talked about Ted Lasso before when we talked about optimism and good signs for the future out in the media. At the time, we were talking about the two shows, Ted Lasso and Emily in Paris. Marvelously cheerful, optimistic, charming, earnest, innocent. It's not edgy, smutty humor, although, they can be edgy, and that's fine. But just good-natured.
Yeah, my very favorite character on Ted Lasso is Rebecca. And
she is turning out to be quite winning.
Just love her. I just love her.
And at the beginning, if you've never watched Ted Lasso before, and if you decide to give it a shot, you will wonder, why does Amy like this woman? And once you know the whole story, and yes,
there is development.
There is character development in this show. As light and sometimes silly as it can be, it has substance.
Yes.
And by the time you get to season 3, I'll tell you, season 2 was a roller coaster. Yeah. And there are a lot of people who maybe not a lot of people, but there were people who checked out in season 2, or at least had to grit their teeth. Season 3 will make it all worth it. And they're wrapping up. They're only planning to do 3 seasons. There's rumors that they're considering a 4th, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're wrapping it up too neatly. Kind of like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, another show that is extremely charming, even though a bit of a roller coaster. They're on their 5th season, but that's definitely going to be it. If you're not watching that one already, you should be, and so you'll listen to us, and you will be. The other thing that I was watching was Modern Times, which is why I called this show Modern Times, this episode Modern Times, because it's a Charlie Chaplin film, but sometimes it seemed more like a Diego Rivera film. Because Charlie Chaplin is in modern times working in a modern factory with big machines and assembly lines. Brings to mind the I Love Lucy episode in which Lucy and Ethel are trying to keep up with the chocolates assembly line, and they can't manage to package the chocolates fast enough. Lucy starts popping them in her mouth so that she's not running behind. Very comedic. Well, this film, Modern Times with Charlie Chaplin.
I've never seen it, actually.
Well, it's one of the things that I wanted to say is if you've never seen it, it's on the internet. You see anything more than 75 years old, the copyrights have expired, and unless they had some way to renew them, like making a change to the film, they're all out there. They're all public domain. And I heartily recommend that you're using archive.org for resources like that. There was some sketchy goings on at archive.org. They weren't monitoring uploads for copyright violations as effectively as they should. They're getting better about that, but it is such a magnificent resource. So, watching Modern Times, Charlie Chaplin, again, it's The portrayal of the capitalists is not flattering. The portrayal of the assembly line workers is, they're facing hard times in modern times. Because the factory owners keep putting the squeeze on them. Keep work faster, work faster, work faster, work longer, don't take any breaks. They bring in an automated lunch machine in to feed you while you're working so you don't have to take lunch off. It's a comedy, so it's exaggerated. But there was a lot of that, or at least some of that, really terrible working conditions. It was interesting to watch the second not episode, but the sequel to the Enola Holmes series, which again involves a factory in which people are being worked in an unethical way. And there was a lot of that. And then things got better. They had to get better because factory owners were competing for labor.
Yes. And there was a lot of turnover in those jobs. And, we talk about, Henry Ford and the $5 a day and the 8-hour day, work day.
Yeah. And there really were factory owners who were angry at Henry Ford.
Yeah. And there was just a lot of turnover. There were a lot of immigrants. Henry Ford taught the immigrants, some rudimentary English so that people can actually communicate, right? And he actually, there's a story that he taught all of the supervisors and the foremen there in the factory to make sure that they understood how to say one word in every language, which was hurry.
Hurry.
But the thing is that people were happy with pretty much that they were happy enough and they were getting enough pay to actually buy the thing that they were producing. So they were able to save up and buy a Model T and create the working middle class. So the thing is that for all of the communists complaining or the socialists complaining, the thing is that if you have people who are free, who are not controlled by the top-down kind of, communist system, they will eventually work things out. You're going to have a period of time where it may be chaotic, it may not be desirable, it may be kind of ugly, but eventually it does work itself out. And, it's frustrating because it's sort of like, again, this is another crock pot issue. You've just got to put it in the crock pot, let it simmer and stew for a while, and it'll work itself out eventually because people will want to work together and people will want to actually have good relationships with each other. It's not some kind of cynical way of existing, especially when you're free and especially when you're not owned by anybody else and especially when you're not told what to do and where to go and where to work. You get to choose. You get to vote with your feet, and it's a benevolent arrangement of individuals. So, AKA society.
Well, exactly right. The reality is that at every step of the way, every innovation improved things to the point where now, in modern times, now hold on to that idea, now in modern times, nobody is forced to do the kind of things that they were quote-unquote forced to do. Here's the thing. In the 1920s, in the 1930s, nobody was actually forced to take those factory jobs or to work those coal miner jobs. Why did people take on that kind of work?
Because they didn't want to farm anymore.
It was better than the alternatives.
Farming sucked.
Now, I know some of our left-wing friends will say, well, that's wage slavery. It's not literal slavery, but if the best wages you can make are doing something lousy, then you are a wage slave.
That's such a lie.
It is such a lie. Yes. But also, again, what they were doing in the factories was better than what they were doing elsewhere. And ultimately, what they did in the factories got better, or they could leave and become waitstaff. or other people in service industries.
There you go.
And I have known waiters and waitresses who worked for minimum wage. And I have known waiters and waitresses who made more money than I ever did as an IT technician.
Yeah.
So you can be as ambitious in that regard as you like.
Yes.
In fact, the same thing was true in IT. The technicians I knew who complained the most about the kind of money they made, they also weren't very good at what they did. And the ones who were really good at what they did, and not just technically or in terms of how intelligent they were on the job, but in terms of their willingness to go above and beyond and do an outstanding job at every gig, they did make out, and those were the ones who ended up making six figures.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, every change has had reasons for criticism in a given context, but we're also part of a progression. Well, what about modern times? Oh, what, you think these are modern times? You think 2023 is modern times just because now we have automation and we have robotics and we have the dawn of artificial intelligence and we have an internet where information is ubiquitous and you can not only find out anything that you want, you can consume anything you want, you can watch any movie that you like, you can hear any piece of music in the world, and you can reach out and talk to anybody that you want to. You can find kindred spirits if you're willing to do that.
You could talk to movie stars and celebrities. You know, it'll cost you maybe $200, but you can do it.
So I get it. I get the temptation to call these, like Charlie Chaplin did back in the 20s, to call these modern times. Oh, we're so... I love how Harry Binswanger says, you know, you don't think of these as modern times like, oh, we're so modern. You're just used to it. This is just the status quo.
Yeah.
And that's actually the right perspective, because 30 years from now, given the acceleration of this progression, in 30 years, you can call it modern times, and we'll be able to say, oh, man, we finally have, not the Apple Watch where I have to lift up my arm and talk to my watch, but I can just think my questions to the internet. Oh, good. Yeah, I can't believe before then. We've talked about all of the movie plots, all of the book plots that wouldn't make any sense in a world in which there are cell phones, much less a world in which there are smartphones. All of those stories just completely fall apart. And that's as it should be.
You know what's really a modern times movie for me?
What's that?
It really drives home the point.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit kind of odd because it's not if you don't want spoilers, don't listen any further, okay? Or just give me 2 minutes. So I was actually at work on Friday, and we went around the room and asked each other what was your favorite movie or what's your favorite couple of movies. And so I gave a couple of movies. One was Amelie, and the other one was, surprisingly came to my mind, was Searching for Sugar Man.
Oh.
Searching for Sugar Man. And it's you've got to watch it, and I don't necessarily want to give away everything, but it's basically about a musician who was lost to history.
Oh, yeah, there's a story that only makes sense in the time that it took place and would be totally different if it happened now.
Yes. And
yeah, it's one of those films where if you're going to watch it, don't learn anything about it before you watch it.
That is correct. But it is such an inspirational, I just think of it and it gives me chills. It's one of those stories that is extremely inspirational, extremely uplifting, and it'll take you on an amazing journey. And it's the kind of journey that you would only ever be able to witness, from the last 20 years or so. Right.
Now, I do know people who have a pessimistic perspective on the world, and I appreciate that, and I totally get it. There are certain standards that have gone downhill. There are certain ideas that have been lost. There's a degree of both earnestness and ambitiousness that seems less common now. Although I can say it wasn't that much different when I was young, and that's going back a while. But I totally get that. But the connection between the American Red Cross and Amelia Earhart and Phil Collins and all of these other developments. There's an old quote. I don't even know if it's a quote. It's something I heard somebody say something like once. Maybe I should take credit for the quote because I'm sure this wasn't exactly how it was said. Although 1,000, 100,000 people have already said something like this. In fact, I wrote it on a Post-it note, although it's not my Post-it note for the day. And this Post-it note here, which is not my Post-it note for the day, says, most people spend a lifetime looking for paradise. But if you stop and look around, you'll realize you're already there. The 1920s was paradise. We had the first radios coming out. We had the first airplanes in the sky. We had the first of so many opportunities for people to live lives that went above and beyond the farm and tradition and doing whatever your parents did because that's the best you could do. We were already seeing that in the golden age, the late 1800s. But where we're at right now is so far beyond that. You know, I always say, I wake up in the morning and nobody tells me what I have to do. Oh, you have to go on your job, or you have to do what the government says. I don't have to do anything. I haven't had a day in my life when I didn't wake up in the morning and have all of the options, including, whatever job I'm working, I can walk out any time I like without starving to death. I have countless options, more than people have ever had before.
Yep.
Now let me read a quote to you. In fact, I'm going to read a couple quotes to you from this book here. This book, some of you will have already heard of this, is called Atlas Shrugged.
What is that book?
By Ayn Rand. And so here's the connection. And this ties back to my show on Thursday, too.
Okay.
In the name of a return to morality. It's from a big speech in the book. Some of you will know this. In the name of a return to morality, you have sacrificed all of those evils that you held to be the cause of your plight. You have sacrificed justice to mercy. You have sacrificed independence to unity. You have sacrificed reason to faith. You have sacrificed wealth to need. You have sacrificed self-esteem to self-denial. You have sacrificed happiness to duty. Unquote. Now, again, the premise is that the latter of these are the supposed virtues of the people that at this point our protagonist is addressing. These supposed ideals of mercy and unity and faith and need and self-denial and duty. The trouble is, this quote applies just as much to my allies, and maybe to some of you out there. Think about this for a second. Particularly those of you who are feeling pessimistic about the state of the world. In the name of a return to morality, you have sacrificed all those evils which you held to be the cause of your plight. You have sacrificed justice to mercy. Again, I know the better people out there, you didn't sacrifice justice to mercy. But have you sacrificed justice? Do you still believe in justice? We'll get to that. You have sacrificed independence to unity. You have sacrificed reason to faith. You have sacrificed wealth to need. You have sacrificed self-esteem to self-denial. You have sacrificed happiness to duty. Earlier in the story, before we get to the big speech, our protagonist is talking to our other protagonist, our hero of the story. And he is telling her. Now again, those of you who might be feeling a little pessimistic or a little malevolent about the state of the world, he tells her this, quote, if you fail, as men have failed in their quest for a vision that should have been possible, yet has remained forever beyond their reach. If, like them, you come to think that one's highest values are not to be attained, and one's greatest vision is not to be made real, don't damn this earth as they did. don't damn existence. You have seen the atlas they were seeking. It is here. It exists. But one must enter it naked and alone, with no rags from the falsehoods of the centuries, with the purest clarity of mind, not an innocent heart, but that which is much rarer, an intransigent mind. Unquote. Now, I hear you objecting out there. I can hear you saying, well, in that regard, she's talking about metaphysics. And yes, metaphysically, the world is great. The universe is benevolent. It's people that are horrible. It's people that are destroying the world. It's people that are ruining my life and making me a pessimist. I would ask you to think twice about that.
Can I just chime in real quick?
Yes.
I have a Facebook friend who I don't know in real life, and I'm sure that this person is hopefully somewhat happy with his life, maybe. But anyway, he basically said this world is poop, okay? And it's filled with poopy people.
I see you've edited that because we're a G-rated show.
He said the S-H
But yes,
word.
the world is full of crap, and it's full of crappy people.
So my response to him was, you might consider not being one of them. That's something.
Yeah, that would be a start.
That's a start.
That would be a start. I love that our hero is telling our other hero, though, in this quote that I'm reading from, but in your worst and darkest moments, remember that you have seen another kind of world. Now, I'll stop the quote for a moment and say, this isn't just a world that you've seen in fiction. This is a world that you have seen every time you've gone to see an orchestra. Mm-hmm. Every time that you've flown on an airplane. Every time that you have called an HVAC technician out and he's replaced your air conditioner, like we had done this week.
Amazing.
Anytime you have seen anybody competent do anything, even if you can think, well, he should have been better. He should have been more rational. He should have been more competent. That flight should have gone even better. That orchestra should have played even better. If these people were consistently rational, the whole world would be different. I get that. I totally feel that. I understand that. And yet, I am surrounded by good people doing good things, and I rely on them. Life and death, I rely on them, and I am thankful for that.
Yes.
Again, going back to this quote, but in your worst and darkest moments, remember that you have seen another kind of world. Remember that you can reach it. Whenever you choose to see, remember that it will be waiting and that it's real. It's possible. It's yours. I don't know if I caught the first time I read this book that line is repeated later when he gives his big speech and he's talking to the world at large. The world you desired can be won. It exists. It is real. It is possible. It is yours. I know that things aren't the way they should be. I know that there's a lot we have to fight. I also know that while we fight, we're not stuck in the mechanistic world of modern times by Charlie Chaplin.
No.
A charming and very funny movie, but it's got that Diego Rivera metaphysics.
Yeah.
We're not in that world.
No.
We wake up every morning. All of the options are ours. It is all open to us. It's not all open to us. There's government regulations stopping me from doing X, Y, and Z. I totally get that. It's not all open to us because so many people are incompetent out there, I can't count them. I totally get that. Take those into account. And they need to be judged. They're not metaphysical, they're man-made. But once you've judged them, treat them as metaphysical. In other words, those are the conditions we're in. That sucks. But now, what am I going to do with the infinite possibilities that remain open to me?
You know, not only do you have infinite possibilities open to you, but you have a moral code that is rational, that's consistent, that helps you judge other people, helps you judge your own actions, helps you keep yourself reality-based, helps you actually act in a world that that where there is cause and effect relationships that you can count on every single day.
Yes.
And you can make a successful life. You don't, it's not just a matter of surviving, but you can actually have a joyous, frolicking time here while you're living as a human being on
Right.
this big planet. So, it's,
Yep.
I think this is I don't know if this is the same quote that but James Valiant, who by the way is in the audience on Facebook, thank you for being here,
And is awesome in all the ways that you want a man to be awesome.
can I just say, oh my God. So I was just talking with a friend yesterday and I said, you know what, out of all of the objectivist intellectuals out there, excluding Robert, of course, who's my favorite, my second favorite has to be James Valiant.
Well, that's a hell of a competition.
And I love the fact that he's so congruous. He has the reason and the passion combined in everything that he says, in every mannerism, every gesture, every moment of body language when he's on camera at ARCUK and in person. He is just himself, and he is the best. He is just an excellent example of living morally, living rationally, and living passionately. And you can really tell that he takes not just the ideas seriously, and they're up in his head in an organized fashion. He can communicate to them about them and teach people, but he really means it. And it really applies to his values in life. And that's something that, Robert and I have strived to do in life. I know a lot of people, as Mary, Linda Cordair is also in the chat. Who she is,
one of the best people in the world.
One of the best people, the queen of art.
Selling some of the best art in the world.
Cordair Fine Art at Cordair.com. And, I'm just so absolutely grateful and just thrilled that, or chuffed as they say in the UK, that
totally
I know
chuffed.
that I not only can I see people like this act in the way that they do and the way that they handle their own lives, but I know them personally, which is just absolutely out of this world. So I just want to say this is something that is so
No.
James actually posted a quote from Atlas Shrugged, and is it the same one that you read just now?
No, it's important to make this part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Do you want to read it, or you want me to read it?
You will enter You will not enter Atlantis until you learn that you do not need to convince or to conquer the world.
Yes.
When you learn it, you will see that through all the years of your struggle, nothing had barred you from Atlantis, and there were no chains to hold you except the chains you were willing to wear. Through all those years, that which you most wished to win was waiting for you.
I was actually going to read that quote. There's a copy of it sitting on the office printer over there that I forgot to snatch. And especially that first line, you will not enter Atlantis, the ideal. You will not enter until you learn that you do not need to convince or to conquer the world. Mm-hmm. Now, I have to say something. I've got to put a caveat there. I've got to put a proviso. There's an asterisk, and it's important. I am not intending for anybody to say, but I do feel angry, or I do feel pessimistic. I do rage at the injustice out there in the world. So is something wrong with me? Are you saying there's something wrong? No, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you. I think it's crucial that we do bristle at the injustices and the irrationality in the world. That's absolutely got to happen. In fact, in the show notes, I put a link to my episode with James Valiant entitled The Curse of Emotional Shoulds. Because you should never feel that you should feel a certain way. You can't force your emotions. There are reasons for the things that you feel. And it's not necessarily, I must have been irrational because that's a bad feeling. There are no bad feelings. They're all clues. They're all evidence. They're all telling you, oh, I need to look within and find out, why do I feel this way? And if it's something I need to take action on, I need to then take action on that thing that's got me feeling this way. Objectivists are not anti-emotions. We just understand what they are and their role in our lives. I also put a link to an article on WebMD, of all places, to convince you that you have cancer. No, I'm just kidding. That's the stereotype. There's an article on WebMD called How to Stop Feeling Anxious Right Now.
Okay.
Well, anxiousness may seem like an emotion, and you shouldn't manipulate your emotions, right? But it's actually a very good article. If any of you have those feelings of anxiety, it was a good one. It was a winner. Nice. I want to make that point, though, that if you think I'm addressing you and criticizing you, I'm not. This is all intended to be positive, all intended to be helpful. And I totally empathize with the people saying, well, for all this great stuff you say is in the world isn't anywhere near where it should be, and people aren't anywhere near as good as they should be for all the good that's out there. Trust me, I totally get that. But the reason I showed you my note to myself here, most people spend a lifetime looking for paradise. But if you stop and look around, you'll see that you're already there.
Is that from a movie?
No.
Oh, okay. It just
sounds not as far as I know.
It sounds like something.
Maybe that I heard it somewhere and now I think that I said it. But my real Post-it note for the day says, it's real, it's possible, it's yours. Most people spend a lifetime looking for paradise. If you stop and look around you, you'll see that you're already there. Oh, maybe that isn't as woo as it sounds at first. This world is ours. This life is ours. And yeah, we've got to share it with a lot of other people, some of whom are great because they're members of an orchestra or part of a dance troupe, or they're working a factory that produces these amazing, say, electronics that we're using to get the word out to you. Brings all of you to us in the chat. And some people aren't as great. Some people are like those weird people we saw at the park. The point is, yeah, the world is out there, and some of it is not the way we would design it if we were the intelligent designers. There are no intelligent designers. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. And for all that I wish people would do better things and make better choices and be happier, and it's one of the reasons we do shows like this, is to make more of that happen. It's an amazing world. It's a benevolent universe. And I have infinite possibilities open to me, and you do too. I don't want to minimize tragedy. I don't want to minimize suffering. And I certainly don't want to minimize the real evils that are out there. But that's the smaller part of the picture. And it is not what we are here for. You know, living is more than just not dying or not suffering. So, welcome to modern times. I'm telling you, 30 years from now, you will look back at 2023 and say, oh yeah, the old days before we had all the great stuff we have now. It's not going to go crazy. It's not going to go out of control just because of robotics and AI, but it's going to be damn interesting. It's going to be damn good. I can't even project the degree of awesomeness that is ahead of us. Also the dangers, but that has always been so, always been true. I've done whole shows on why I'm optimistic, not pessimistic, both about the culture and about automation and technology. All of that for another time. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here on my and Amy's discussion of modern times. Now, before I let you go, come back Thursday on the Ayn Rand Center UK.
Yes.
Now, you know, Amy semi-retired from the Ayn Rand Center UK. She's working weekdays.
I have other things to do.
She has other things to do.
I can't clone myself to cover everything that I want to do.
There's only so many hours in a day and only so many Amy's out there. But on Thursday, this Thursday coming up on my show Life on Earth, our show Life on Earth, Amy will co-host with me. And we're going to interview Jean Maroney again. And we're going to be talking about the concept of happiness. On episode 94 of Life on Earth. Be there. Do not miss it.
Yes.
It's going to be good. Jean has been writing these essays, these blog posts on the concept of happiness, on emotions, how we integrate emotions into our life, how to manage the way in which not just the emotions come in, but what we do to achieve our values. That's going to be a great discussion.
Yeah, thinkingdirections.com, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Jean Maroney, I'm really excited to talk to her. I missed the last time that she and Robert talked.
That's true. You were out of town.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to make it. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I hope that you're there, and I'm sure that we can come up with some really excellent questions and hopefully have one of those serendipitous kind of like conceptual melding love fests that we often do with people.
If you didn't come away from this episode saying, wow, this is going to make life better, that one will. Actually, I hope they both do. Mm-hmm. So yes, join us on Thursday. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Quick wrap here. If you need more information about this show, the notes, look in the description on YouTube or look on Facebook. You will find links to all of the interesting things that were responsible for this discussion. You can find everything you want at robertnasir.com. At robertnasir.com, you'll find links to the Facebook, links to the Twitter, links to all the stuff, but also links to Patreon. Patreon.com/robertnasir.
You know what? You can tip us.
You can tip us.
You're not in Japan. You
can over-tip us. You can even tip us over. Well, if you can find us. Thank you. Thank you to those of you who are already patrons of this show. Your support every month makes us motivated, happy, excited to do these shows. You can use PayPal for a single contribution if you just want to leave one tip. That would be awesome too. It's all at robertnasir.com. So you know what to do. And as always, I want to sign off. I want to wish you every success that you so richly deserve, and that includes the major and mammoth things that you do for your career to make your relationships work, to have a home, a residence, or wherever it is you choose to spend your time. But it also includes the little things. I want to give you major kudos just for having a good time, just for having a good life, just for having that earnest desire to enjoy your time on Earth. Because, you know, most people spend their whole lives looking for paradise. If you stop and look around, you'll realize you're already there. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. We'll do this again soon. We'll do it next Sunday. We'll talk to you on Thursday. As always, we wish you happiness. We wish you flourishing. I'm forgetting something. What am I forgetting?
Bunnies.
We wish you bunnies. No. Well, we do, kind of.
No, can I just say it?
You say it.
We wish you love.